You guys can stand right up to the side here, okay? Stay right here.
Can I get there right?
No, hold on. 1 second, right there. All right.
What was that like after you break the record and your family's right there? Obviously, you go over to shot. I mean, could you just explain the emotion of that moment?
Well, you know, it's hard for me to reflect too much right now just because my career's not done. There are still goals to be accomplished. There's still challenges to be met. And so I'm still very focused on that. And yet when something like this happens and I can, you know, there's so many people that are responsible for that can be a part of that, that makes me happy. You know, it makes me proud and it makes me extremely grateful for the opportunity to play this game, to have played it as long as I've been able to play it, to have wound up here in New Orleans, which you all know that story. So it's been an unbelievable journey, and I'm just so grateful.
You know, the state of Texas, football is religion. Let's be honest about that. You grow up wanting to play for Westlake as a kid. You go to middle school, you're running the basics of the Westlake offense. And then you get your chance when you get to be a freshman. And, you know, once you're there and you're like, all right, I'm gonna be that next guy. I'm gonna be the guy who's gonna take Westlake to their first state champion. And that was kind of the way it was going for myself. Until I blew my knee out my sophomore year. And from that, I lost my spot to a guy named Drew Brees. And, you know, I never got that spot back.
I was born in Dallas, Texas. I moved to Austin when I was 7 years old. And that was right at a time where my parents were getting divorced. And so, you know, we lived in a lot of different places from age 7 to 14. But at the end of the day, my mom had done a ton of research on all the high schools in Austin and felt like Westlake High School had the best all-around academics and athletics. And she wanted that opportunity for, you know, me and my brother. And so she moved into the Westlake High School district so that we would be able to go to high school there.
You know, I moved to Westlake in 8th grade, and so I was a bit late as well. I mean, Drew was too. Drew went to a private school and then kind of moved over for high school. And so I think we were a little bit later to the scene there.
There's really a Drew Brees story. As far as us, we really didn't know anything about Drew Brees because he didn't go to the middle school at the Westlake School District. And when he came in as a freshman, his dad tells us the first scrimmage we had when he was a freshman, he didn't get in the scrimmage. Chip, his dad, said he thought about talking to me about it, but he didn't. And so anyway, that first year, Drew played on our freshman B team. Then the next year, he was going to play on our JV B team, and the starting quarterback in that class got hurt.
As much as, you know, I wanted to be that guy, you know, Drew's a very good friend of mine, and I want him to be successful, and he stepped in, and watching him take the reins, whew, a little scary.
He had an aptitude to play quarterback, and we didn't pick it up until all these circumstances happened where we had to play him at quarterback.
So I tore my ACL my junior year, the 3rd round of the playoffs. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were undefeated. It was probably one of the best teams I've ever been a part of. We were going down to play in the 3rd round of the playoffs a team called Alice down in South Texas. It was a hostile environment. It was a bootleg play, so I fake a handoff and I go to my right and I get hit and I come down and I feel my knee just, you know, it's kind of like slipped out of place and came back, and I immediately knew that something wasn't right, especially as I began, you know, walked to the sideline and it was very unstable. And so when the doctor did the test and looked at me and said, "You've torn your ACL," I mean, I was just completely devastated, just devastated. You know, not only just kind of the hopes and dreams of that season and, you know, that team feeling like, you know, we had an opportunity to state championship, but I had seen friends and other teammates have ACL injuries just like this, and some had never come back the same. You know, it just, for whatever reason, you know, it's a serious injury.
It was gut-wrenching when it happened because you just feel, at that point, it wasn't clear that he was going to have a very successful collegiate career or scholarships, certainly not pros. I mean, as I'm sure it's well documented, his kind of lack of attention to him in high school. And so when you have an injury like that and it's going to shelve you for a year, I mean, if said another way, that's going to shelve you for 50% of your career. If you're a junior and that happens and you miss your senior year, I mean, that's the end of your sport, effectively. It's not a sprained ankle.
Drew is the most competitive person you've ever met. And for somebody to tell him he couldn't do something and challenge him, that's about the worst thing you can do, is challenge Drew Brees. Because he will step up to the challenge, and 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, he'll meet it.
There was a defining moment for me in my athletic career, because up until that point, I hadn't really faced that type of adversity before. You know, the type of adversity where you feel like something's really being taken away from you, you know, and that maybe you won't come back the same, you know. And it scared me, it motivated me, it inspired me, it made me much stronger in my faith. I really became a Christian at that time in my life.
He's not going to brag about it, but I've always felt like he's real strong in his faith. And you know, we were talking in our Bible class, we all look back at our lives. Coaches, we're all kind of retired, and we can see where things happen in our life that we feel like God had something to do with it. And I've always felt that about Drew. I never talked to him about it, but I always felt that way. You know, you look back at your life and, you know, why did he tear his ACL? Would he be in a New Orleans Saints or the leading passer without tearing that ACL? Or why didn't he play in that first scrimmage when he was a freshman? Was it something that humbled him, that put him, you know, made him work harder?
I realized that maybe the things that I was worrying about were really very trivial. You know, it was really about, you know, what's more of my purpose, you know, and so I think I just learned a lot about myself during that time, and certainly my faith being strengthened, and just took it one day at a time. And it was amazing, I think, the transformation, not only physically, but mentally, psychologically, that I went through over the next 6 months as I went through the rehab process. And just, you know, I gained 25 pounds. I became so much mentally tougher. You know, I had to overcome obstacles in rehab that I'd never had to overcome before. And, you know, there's a toughness element, both mentally and physically, that comes along with that. And, you know, by the time the next season rolled around, I was bigger, stronger, faster, but I was also so much mentally tougher and felt like not only was I going to come back, but I was going to come back stronger. You know, that was my mentality during that whole process.
Watching them train and rehab from an injury is as inspiring as anything they'll ever do on a field. And that doesn't get as much press, and certainly in high school you're not watching Drew rehab, but he busted his ass. And he busted his ass so he could get fully back, wanted his position back, wanted to lead the team. I know he had bigger ideas on what he could do after that, but it takes a lot of work, and it's hard to do that when you're not at 100%, when your leg feels like it weighs 100 pounds and you can't bend your knee, and the light at the end of the tunnel isn't 2 weeks on a sprained ankle, but it's 9 months. And then even then, you're uncertain when you plant on it if it's going to go again. So every time you take a step from there the rest of your life, you're potentially looking at a 9-month hiatus. And I think it takes a special mind share to kind of, you got to compartmentalize it.
So he's cleared to play football in August before his senior year. And we were really concerned about it because of that knee injury, but that's when I saw him start to develop. We were playing in the San Antonio Churchill. We were playing the Alamo Dome in one of our playoff games, and Drew had steadily improved, and we were making our receiver breaks at like 10 or 12 yards, and so we moved him up to 20, where they'd make their breaks, and he was whistling that ball out there. I mean, he was just exploding the ball, 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. And so, you know, it was that point I just saw him develop.
You know, the first playoff game was a little tough. We played San Antonio MacArthur. That was the closest game I think we played the entire year. And I think it was first game playoff jitters. You know, once we got through that, we started to roll, and you know, Drew's shoulder caught fire. You know, everybody was in sync, and before you know it, we're in Dallas getting ready to play the state championship.
it was really magical, all the way to the state championship game where, we're playing Abilene Cooper. Dominic Rhodes is the running back on the other side. He played in the NFL for a long time. The score was tied 7-7 at halftime. It was just one of these kind of gritty, tough games, and then, we blew it open in the second half, got some turnovers, did some good things offensively and special teams, and ended up winning 55-15, and so kind of won it running away, but just the journey. So much of that was just the journey. And again, I can reference every game and every guy on that team, just because that's, for many people, that's kind of the end of it. After high school, not a lot of guys get the chance to go on and play beyond that. And so I think all of us had that mentality, like this was the pinnacle.
Every season you could write a book. There's so many, you got discipline problems you deal with, you got just, you name it, you have to deal with it. I can remember we were playing in the Alamo Dome. We had like 3 more games for the state championship. And Johnny Rogers was a part of this. After we won the game, the team was together, and Rogers had organized them, and they were chanting, "Drew Brees, Drew Brees, Drew Brees." That was sort of an unbelievable deal. And when you saw that happening, and Drew didn't really do anything extraordinary for this to happen. I think that's the story of Drew Brees, this humility. His just being Drew Brees creates team unity. And this whole team is in there chanting Drew Brees. And you don't chant the guy's name if you don't like him. If they're ugly to you in the dressing room or whatever, or they bully you, you don't chant their name, and they were chanting his name, and that gave me the goosebumps when I heard that. Drew Brees, Drew Brees, Drew Brees, Drew Brees, Drew Brees, Drew Brees, White Brees, Drew Brees, Drew Brees, White Brees.
Hello, I'm Nate Baird, a communications student at Purdue University. I'd like to introduce you to a remarkable person. If you follow college football, you've probably heard this name. He's Drew Brees, who last year, as a 19-year-old true sophomore quarterback, shattered just about every Purdue and Big Ten single-season passing record on the books.
Drew's always been a confident guy, sometimes too much so, because he thinks he can complete every pass and actually throw the ball through the open linebacker. And that isn't true. But certainly he's a guy that is very confident, and that is really a great quality to have, in the sense that if he does throw an interception or he does make a mistake out there, he very quickly, he's on to the next play mentally.
That's a beauty. 3rd down now for Brees. And they were on him. Intercepted! Intercepted! Brees can stop him. He does. He knocks him out of bounds. Brees was the only defender who could knock Mike Doss out of bounds. A disaster for Purdue. The 4th interception of the game.
So Purdue University, funny story. So I have the ACL injury my junior year of high school. I'm not recruited at all.
So going into your senior year is kind of your time to go to the schools, go to the summer camps, get noticed.
Where they get all the measurables. The 40 time, how many times you can rep 225.
And at all these camps, Drew's slower, okay? He's got a rocket for an arm, but he's not very mobile.
Here listen, I'm a 6-foot quarterback. I play for a team that's a good team. It's a good program. In many cases, it's the system, right? Or that was the perception.
And John Malkovich at that time was the head coach at Texas. He caught a lot of flack for not, especially when we were deep in the playoffs, for not recruiting him. And John Malkovich said, well, I've already used up my quarterback allotment.
But we're winning games, and we're accomplishing a lot as a team. And I remember at some point midway through the playoffs, I still had not received a single phone call from a school.
Our senior year, Drew was the 5A state player of the year on the 5A state championship team. Now, what Drew did on the field speaks for itself. And any coach that missed that, chances are they're probably not coaching anymore. Drew only had 2 scholarship offers, full-ride Division I football scholarship offers. It was Kentucky and Wyoming. And the head coach of Wyoming decided to take the job at Purdue.
In 1997, Purdue returned to the college football national stage. A journey back was the result of a relentless pursuit of victory. by a unique group of players and coaches. The journey's first step, however, was the hiring of Joe Tiller as Purdue's 33rd head football coach on November 22nd, 1996.
When I come out to practice and we're getting ready for the state championship game, and I look on the sideline and there are two coaches.
We had Coach Tiller from Purdue sitting on a bench on our sideline. Drew was so focused on the game, he didn't want to worry about that.
I look at him and I look at Coach and I say, "Who are they here to see?" And he looks at me and he said, "They're here to see you." I said, "Okay, well, Purdue, Ivy League, all right, that's good." I had no idea that Purdue was Big Ten. That says a lot for its academic reputation. Maybe it doesn't say a lot for its football reputation. But the more that I began to now learn about Purdue University is really what a strong heritage it has and tradition as it pertains to quarterbacks, you know, the cradle of quarterbacks.
I was just glad that there were two schools recruiting him, because it would have been a shame if he had not been recruited.
Drew's always had a way of landing on his feet. Joe Tiller getting the job at Purdue.
He was bringing this high-flying spread offense to the Big Ten, which had never been done.
And had found Drew and said, "You're my guy."
So there was a lot of confidence with that. You know, I mean, he was the first person who had really looked me in the eye and made me believe that I belonged there and that I could be a part of something really unique there.
Okay, we have a very positive coaching staff and a very good coaching staff and an aggressive coaching staff, and that if we could get our players to spend time around our coaches, we could affect their thinking in a very positive way.
Joe Tiller got the job in December. He's trying to throw together a recruiting class in January, and then we're all signing in February. And
you know, everybody always said we were Joe Tiller's babies. You know, we were his first recruiting class, and it was a small class.
You know, we were ranked dead last in the Big Ten in recruiting classes, and there was only about 14 or 15 of us, you know, whereas most recruiting classes are 25 or 30. So we already had this edge.
That's kind of something to be proud of, considering his history at Purdue. You know, being the most winningest coach at Purdue. And Drew was, of course, the quarterback that was supposed to come in and run Joe Tiller's wide open offense.
Well, first of all, I don't call Jason Jason, I call him Jay Bird.
Jay Bird, gosh, Jay Bird was, it was never Jason, it was never just Lorzell. Drew always called me Jay Bird.
Jason and I hit it off right away. Jay Bird actually started off at receiver. He came in as a slot receiver, and then he ended up transitioning to playing linebacker.
We ended up, you know, going to the dorm rooms to get our rooms, and we were 2 doors away from each other in the dorm rooms.
We became roommates our second year. You know, we hit it off, became very good friends, along with our other roommate, Ben Smith, who came in as a quarterback and then transitioned to free safety. You know, we were thick as thieves. We were best friends and roommates for the rest of our time at Purdue.
There were no regulations on, you know, how many times you practice, how many times you practice in pads, and you really had to lean on each other to get through. Basically, you know, we're in between practices, you know, we're trying to find a corner to sleep in, to relax, and we're trying to eat the food that we need to eat to you know, still compete and not cramp. But you really develop a bond with not just your teammates, but you know, a lot of them turn into your brothers.
You know what, we're coming in and we're underrated, but we're gonna show them what we're made of. And by the time we leave here, this class is gonna lead this team to a Big Ten championship and a Rose Bowl.
It was the kickoff classic against USC. It was one of the hottest games I think we've ever played. We finished that game at USC. Interestingly enough, Coach Tiller boarded us up on buses, and we went over to the Rose Bowl, toured the Rose Bowl as sophomores to kind of get the fire started and burning inside of us. So when we came back, we had already been there. Not to play a game, but we kind of knew what the end goal was.
There were very high expectations because we had made that commitment to one another as a freshman recruiting class 4 years previous, that by the time we left here, we were going to leave here as Big Ten champs. It didn't start off the way that we wanted. You know, we started off 3-2, and we had lost 2 heartbreakers, one at Notre Dame, one at Penn State.
I think really the low point in the season for myself was the Penn State game.
And I remember sitting there, you know, it's kind of going into the month of October, staring at 4 ranked opponents consecutively. Here was the gauntlet. You know, if we were going to accomplish what we set out to accomplish, we were going to have to knock down each of these opponents, and it starts with Michigan. And here comes in Michigan, ranked 5th in the country. Look at their entire roster, and just about every one of them played in the NFL, you know, so they had beat us pretty soundly at their place the year before, but you know, we felt like this was going to be different, and if we could win this game, then this could be the catalyst to the rest of the season.
Here's the snap, the placement, and the boot. It is up. It is good. It's good. It's good. It's good.
Fans rush the field, and it's just mayhem, and I think that was a big turning point for us, a big defining moment for us during that season, because we felt like, listen, we can hang with anybody. We can hang with anybody in the Big Ten, and we can win this conference. And then it was Northwestern on the road, big win. Then it was Wisconsin on the road in overtime, big win. And it was coming back Ohio State.
I love that game. We really played the whole 60 minutes, and the whole game was just action-packed.
3rd down now for Brees. And they were on him. Intercepted! Intercepted! Brees can stop him. He does. He knocks him out of bounds. Brees was the only defender who could knock Mike Doss out of bounds.
I've always believed in Drew, no matter what the circumstances are. I always believe that he can bring us back.
You know, I hate to use this saying, but fixing what he broke, you know, leading by example. Stuff like that shows us the leadership and determination that you need to be successful.
2nd down and 10. Slot to the left, slot to the right. Cedric Brown stays at home alongside Drew Brees. Drew takes the snap from center. Looks, has time to throw. Tears it out deep. Way downfield. Grab by Brown. He's going to score. He's going to score. Touchdown Purdue. Seth Morales. Seth Morales.
Hey, what's your mom always tell you? If you break it, you fix it. I broke it, but I think I fixed it.
He allows everybody else to rise up to his level, or he brings everybody else up to his level. And there's very few players that can do that. I think he's one of them. There's very few quarterbacks that possess that ability.
Who wouldn't want to coach Drew, who's a leader on the field, you know, a leader in the locker room? He's another coach on the field. You know, he's one of those that you can trust that when he leaves the locker room is going to make good decisions. There's a famous picture of Drew and Coach Tiller, with Drew having his arm around Coach Tiller, and it's up everywhere at Purdue. And that was the start of the celebration.
Well, I don't think I'll ever forget the sea of people on the field after the IU game.
Something unique about the season I remember is we had our field rushed 3 times our senior year. 3 times where fans are on the field, jumping on goalposts, bringing them down, just because that was the level of emotion.
I'll always remember that crowd spilling onto the field and the presentation of the trophy after the IU game.
When the horn sounds to beat IU and they bring the bouquet of roses out on the field, I had this image in my mind when I was in high school of watching Charles Woodson for Michigan take a rose and put it in his mouth, and I said, by the time I walk off Purdue's field for the last time, when I walk out of Ross-Ade Stadium, I want to have a rose in my mouth, and we were able to do that. The NFL draft process for me was kind of crazy. I was committed to get my degree. I still had, I think, about 15 hours left. So I was going to school in the mornings, and then I was coming in the afternoon, and I was training. And so I went to the combine. Didn't have a great showing at the combine. You know, I think I was so focused on some of the physical elements, you know, all the things that I felt like they were doubting me. I felt like I had to prove something with my 40 time and some of the other things, and I really didn't throw the ball that well. Kind of kicked myself after.
He didn't have a really good combine, but he's a much more well-rounded athlete than he showed at the combine that year, so that didn't help him at all.
I had followed Drew Brees as far as some guy up at Purdue putting up these amazing numbers as far as a quarterback.
So you look at the numbers that he put up, and then you say, okay, well, he's not quite as athletic as we think he is, and he can't do this and he can't do that very well, and now all of a sudden you do look at him and say, okay, this might not be a guy who's real. Those numbers might not translate because he might be more of a system player than he is a great quarterback.
He's not going to be a guy that's the 6'4", 6'5", tall quarterback. And you start looking at some of the numbers and it's like, man, that's impressive. But the first thing, your first impression is he's not going to be an NFL player.
who cares about this other stuff, man? It's how you throw the ball, and then it's just that personal contact you have with the coaches and who you are and what you stand for, and you know, when you're watching the tape, your football knowledge, your football acumen, and just you know, your leadership ability. From that time until the draft, which is about 3 weeks, you're just sitting there in limbo. You know, you have no idea what's going to happen.
They began gathering outside the theater of Madison Square Garden before the sun came up. Fans of all teams trying to get in to watch Michael Vick. 5 other of the top players like LaDainian Tomlinson.
The Chargers, I knew had a big interest, but they were picking number 1. So I really didn't think the Chargers were, I know I'm not going to get drafted number 1. And
yesterday afternoon, the San Diego Chargers and Atlanta Falcons swapped the number 1 pick of the draft. The headline is, the Atlanta Falcons have an opportunity to select Michael Vick.
Michael Vick, Michael Vick, Michael Vick.
He's the only guy you remember about that draft a lot. I mean, he was a phenomenon.
You know, people were just enamored with Michael Vick. He had a phenomenal game against Florida State in the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans, and that kind of elevated him of how he would translate into the NFL.
You figured if you're an NFL team, you can put some pieces around him and hopefully teach him to be a better pocket passer, or just let him do what he does naturally, and still that will be good enough for you. He was that good a prospect.
With the first selection in the 2001 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Michael Vick, quarterback, Virginia Tech.
I think the Chargers played it extremely well. They needed a quarterback, yes, and they probably figured we can get one later. They had to have LaDainian Tomlinson.
With the 5th pick, the San Diego Chargers select LaDainian Tomlinson, running back from TCU.
Drew and I, both of us being from the state of Texas, we actually played in the same All-Star game. And we met there for the first time, and we became big friends.
Just before draft day, I remember Joe Tiller kind of pulling me aside and saying, hey, I've got a really good friend who's a scout for the Dolphins, and they are sitting at number 26, pick number 26 in the first round. And he says, if you're there, they are taking you. I realized at some point when all the other teams have chosen that, you know, Miami's the only one that's left. And so, waiting for pick number 26, thinking it's going to be the Miami Dolphins.
With the 26th selection, the Miami Dolphins have chosen defensive back from Wisconsin, Jamar Fletcher.
I started looking at the teams after them in the first round, and all of them had quarterbacks. So, well, it's not going to be any of those teams.
But at the time, you looked at it and said, okay, this is probably about where you would think Drew Brees might go.
And then I see the first pick of the second round, and that is the San Diego Chargers.
I think it's a perfect opportunity for San Diego to bring someone in young. We talked about Vick learning under Doug Flutie. Brees can do the same thing.
They had showed a ton of interest, and I felt like I had a great rapport with them. Norv Turner was the offensive coordinator. Mike Riley, the head coach, had some great visits with them, great meetings. They had come to my pro day and just seemed very, interested. And then they were sitting there at the first pick of the second round. And
with the first selection in the second round, number 32 overall, San Diego Chargers have selected quarterback from Purdue, Drew Brees.
There's some Charger fans here and some J.L. jerseys. Tomlinson and Brees.
And I had heard about Drew from my time in high school. I heard about this big-time quarterback at Austin Westlake, and we followed each other through college and went to some of the same banquets that you go to in college. And we actually spoke about being on the same NFL team when we were at one of those banquets our senior year. And ironically, it happened. It was an amazing day for both of us to be drafted by the Chargers.
And the most important thing is ending up in the right place, with the right team, the right system, the right group of people where you can grow and mature and become the player that you aspire to be. And I felt like San Diego was the perfect place at that time for me. Doug Flutie had been signed to be the starter, who was, a huge childhood hero of mine, watching him play, watching the Hail Mary when I was 5 years old, and just all of his accomplishments and just all that he had overcome. He was a gritty, in my opinion, I think Doug Flutie is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game at any level, because he played at a high level at a ton of different levels, right? From college to USFL to CFL to NFL, you name it. And he's still one of my great friends, and I learned so much from him by playing with him. Not a more competitive person on this earth than Doug Flutie.
Well, Drew was a great teammate. You know, he was very supportive of Doug Flutie, and he took the approach of, listen, I just want to learn as much as possible from a guy like Doug Flutie, who has been in the National Football League for a long time.
I think it was a great thing for Drew because Doug had just had so many experiences to talk about. You know, as plays were being maybe installed or talked about, Doug could reflect on his own experiences. And listen, Drew, he takes in every word, he hears it, and you know, he's able to relate it to the game.
So I get drafted 2001, really to come in and back up Doug Flutie and be mentored by him. And the San Diego Chargers had been 1-15 the year before. So it was nothing but up from there, right? So we actually start off 5-2 in 2001, and Doug is rolling, playing great. Doug gets a concussion in the next game. I end up playing a lot and play pretty well, but hey, I'm a rookie and made rookie mistakes and was just kind of, you know, flying by the seat of my pants out there. But we ended up losing 9 consecutive games after that, so we finished 5-11. Marty Schottenheimer came in and opened it up to a competition between Doug and I to be the starting quarterback for the 2002 season. I ended up winning that starting job, so I started, and we went 8-8. We had 1-15 to 5-11 to 8-8. Here we were going into the 2003 season with all kinds of expectations. Here we were, we had gotten a little bit better each and every year. Now we were poised to finally make that leap. We had a really tough season. We finished 4-12. I was benched 3 times during that season. Was benched for a 5-game stretch at one point, you know, for Doug. Man, you talk about tough on the ego, tough on the confidence. For me, you know, that had never happened to me before. I'd never been benched, never even thought that would ever be a possibility, and yet that's reality, you know, that's life. You're not getting the job done, you know, you're not gonna play. So I learned a lot from that. You know, I learned a lot when I had to stand on the sideline and watch it from that vantage point. But I learned so much, and when I stepped back out there, I felt like a different person and a different player. So that was where I was now going into the 2004 season. The front office was looking at it as, Drew Brees may not be our guy, we need to go out and get another guy. And because we had finished so poorly with our record, we were drafting, we had the first pick in the draft.
A 4th pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Phillip Rivers, quarterback, North Carolina State.
Tells me there is a deal because by taking Rivers, it tells you there is a significant trade here in the works between the Chargers and the...
I knew it right away. I mean, prior to the draft, Cam Cameron, our offensive coordinator, pulled me in his office. Brian Schottenheimer, my quarterback coach, pulled me in his office. Marty Schottenheimer pulled me in his office. And they said, listen, we believe in you, but we're telling you right now, they're gonna draft somebody or they're gonna bring somebody in to compete with you, to take your job.
I think Drew looked at the draft when they took Phillip as a challenge. He loves competition in anything. He loves competition. So when Phillip came in, you know, he was the young guy there to take Drew's role. And so Drew was like, it's only gonna make me better.
And I wanted it to bring out the best in me, so I made the commitment to everything I possibly could to put me and my team in the best position to succeed. I ended up winning the job over Flutie and Rivers and being the starter, and we had, you know, one of those kind of storybook seasons from where we were. You know, we went from 4-12 to 12-4, won the division, home playoff game, biggest turnaround in franchise history.
The bottom line is this: we're the San Diego Chargers. You know that. And we are #1 in the AFC West, and we're going to stay.
That growth from, you know, my first 3 years to that year and that moment was a huge pivotal point for me and my mindset in my career.
On the blitz, ball knocked loose, standing on the goal line, and recovered, it looked like maybe by Brandon of the Broncos. John Lynch knocked it out.
We were in a suite with his friends and our family, and
I think Drew Brees got hurt on that play, going for that fumble.
you know, he went down, and I just knew that was it. We were gone.
Oh, that arm gets hyperextended in a very scary position.
I thought to myself, you know, this is probably the last time that I ever put on a Charger uniform. And then reality really sinks in. I say, this might be the last time I ever put on a football uniform.
He walked off the field with his arm just locked up. And it was the strangest position, you know, of anyone that I've ever seen with an arm like that.
I can remember specifically the injury happened, and you know, as a coach, you're always kind of, oh, I wonder how, you know, how bad is it? And I can remember being up in the press box, and as he came off the sideline, onto the sidelines, I can remember Cam Cameron saying, "Oh, it's not good."
I was in disbelief. Like I just didn't believe that he was hurt that bad. You know, we were very close, and like I said, we worked out together, and so to see him kind of holding his shoulder, I just was thinking like, oh, you know, it's just a bad sprain. It's not that bad. It'll be okay.
I knew exactly what my injury was when I got up off the ground. I could feel that basically my shoulder was out of place. It was a dislocated right throwing shoulder. I mean, if you could rank the worst injuries that you could have as a quarterback, I mean, that's right up there.
Well, I happened to be watching the game on TV, and I saw him get hurt, and they showed it again on replay, and I could tell that he was diving for a ball down on his goal line. Then some lineman fell across his body and made his arm go away over his head, and he walked out with his right shoulder caught, and as he came off the sidelines. And having been there and watching that in slow motion and watching him walk off, I knew that he had knocked his humeral head out the socket inferiorly, which is down to the bottom, which is real unusual. It's called a subluxation erecti, and it was locked there out the bottom of the socket.
As I'm walking off, my whole body is just numb. It's numb with shock. It wasn't really so much the pain, it was just knowing the reality of what this was.
And even when the news came down, you know, how serious the injury was, I knew with his work ethic that Drew would bounce back.
You know, the type of makeup, the character of Drew Brees, you thought if there was going to be a guy that was going to have some adversity in his life and be able to overcome it, you knew it would be him.
And just took a deep breath and said, you know, one day at a time, and let's see how severe this is.
A few days later, I was contacted by Drew and his agents, and he came to see me in Birmingham, and I knew he was going to have it operated on.
Dr. Andrews was known to be the guy to go to. And I remember him examining Drew, and when he was examining Drew's arm, he was kind of yanking his arm and pulling it up, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to do more damage, you know, because he was really kind of getting in there.
I remember him looking at me and saying, basically, I've never quite seen anything like this. I know that it's serious. I know I can fix it. I just don't know exactly what I'm going to need to do quite yet, because I think once I get in there, I might find out some more.
His main deal was that he wanted to know that I have to cut to fix it, or could I do it arthroscopically? And I think he was worried if I had to cut, make an incision, that he knew that that was a harder thing to come back from, and he was, of course, worried about his career.
I knew I'd torn a labrum pretty severely, but there was rotator cuff damage too. We just didn't know the extent of it. So when I went under, I really didn't know the extent of what that surgery was going to be.
We put the scope in, and then we were able to truly identify all of the pathology, and he had a 360-degree labral tear all the way around his shoulder, particularly involving the bottom of his shoulder where the labrum attaches to the socket. The thing that we were a little bit surprised with was that he had a complete tear of the undersurface of his supraspinatus and infraspinatus, his rotator cuff, and we had to repair all of that.
I was paged in the middle of the surgery, and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, something's wrong, and Dr. Andrews just was on the phone with his sweet Southern accent, just saying, Brittany, just want to let you know, everything's going great, everything's good, you know, and then just hung up, and that was it.
I'm still coming out of it, but I'm down, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and in true Dr. Andrews fashion, he said, if I did that surgery 100 times, I couldn't do it
as good as I did it this time.
And it kind of perked up, and I was like, really?
And I wanted to plant that positive seed in his mind so that he knew that he could get well.
That helped me breathe a sigh of relief.
and was groggy, and that was the first question. Did they have to cut? Did they have to cut?
You have to cut.
Did you have to cut? And he's like, no. He said we were able to do it arthroscopically.
He said, how did it go? I told him.
That was the most amount of anchors that I have ever put in anyone's shoulder in my entire life.
He said you got 13 anchors in there, 11 in your labrum and 2 in your rotator cuff.
I don't, where do you go from there? I don't even know what that means.
It made it a lot better prognosis to be able to put all that back arthroscopically because it was less trauma and less injury by surgery to the shoulder joint.
And then I knew, okay, it's all about the rehab. And I said, all right, what's the rehab look like? 8 months. It's like, whew, 8 months.
Even after Drew had had the surgery, the Chargers were still saying to him, we're still gonna take you back. You're still our guy. You had that scenario that was a little misleading, and then you were kind of being pulled in a couple different directions.
I was going into an off season where I don't have a contract. They're just looking for an excuse to put Phillip Rivers on the field.
It was interesting because, Drew had something to prove. You had some people saying that he would never play football again, and then you had some people saying that, look, he can come back from this. This is good. You've gotten all the results. He's back. His throwing speed. Everything's back. His arm strength's back. But he still had to prove himself.
As much as I wanted to believe in my heart, that I was going to come back and I was going to come back stronger. I mean, that was my mindset and my, everything in my being was saying that. Still, there was reality. I hope I can come back and do this.
I'd say the best word to describe New Orleans in that sort of fall of '05 is uncertainty. I mean, definitely, I look at it from a Saints perspective. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen with the Saints. We didn't know if the Superdome would be back in time for them to have a season at home in '06. But, I mean, you didn't know what was going to come back and how long it was going to take. I think that uncertainty swept everybody in every aspect of this city.
Everyone saw the flooding and the devastation, and the big picture was really more about the region and the town than it was just about Saints football.
Well, it was difficult just because of the circumstances of the city, but we got the right staff. We got a lot of good coaches. We had a good mix of veterans and young coaches, and
it's funny how the offseason goes. You talk about the NFL Combine and you talk about all the draft picks, and they had the number 2 pick in the draft, so we focused a lot on which quarterback they liked.
We were at the Combine focusing on Vince Young and Matt Leinart, and the last day of the Combine, I believe, we found out that San Diego had released Drew.
And Drew Brees was one of these quarterbacks, even though he had the questions about the shoulder. He was obviously an established Pro Bowl quarterback. Those guys don't usually become free agents. So he was a huge curiosity, and it made perfect sense for the Saints to kick the tires on him.
I'll forever remember the first phone call I got from Sean Payton, because that was a huge boost for me. I didn't know what free agency was going to look like for a guy with damaged goods, right? With an 8-month rehabilitation process in front of him, and doctors telling him he's got 25% chance of playing football again.
We spent some time on the subject with the injury that he had.
We were really concerned, and man, we had a lot of doctors' reports.
I'm sitting there going, how am I going to impress anybody right now, other than just saying, hey, watch my film and look in my eye, and, I'm going to come back stronger than ever.
We did a lot of due diligence on that, not just on the injury, but on Drew himself. And what we found was, a young man who always defied the odds to be successful. We knew it wasn't going to be a matter of lack of effort. He was going to do everything he could to get his shoulder where he could play again.
And then Mickey and I actually went to Birmingham to pick he and Brittany up on Mr. Benson's plane when it came to them coming on a visit.
And I remember Sean just being such like a talkative, sweet kind of, like just excitable guy. Now knowing what I know is that Coach was constantly trying to talk to us so we wouldn't look out the windows of the plane. Because, we're landing right there, where the airport is, and it was a hard-hit area.
I'm driving the car, and it's Drew in the front seat, Brittany in the back seat, and I'm driving like I've been a resident for 10 years, and I've only been here for a couple months.
He's driving us all around.
We went over to the North Shore to look at some housing.
And we go over the causeway, and it's the bumps.
And so there's that point, I look in the rearview mirror and I see Brittany just kind of nodding off,
Well, I was exhausted. I have to admit, I was exhausted at that time because we were kind of all over the place. And we get lost.
And somewhere off the causeway, I ended up spun around, and I know I was heading towards Baton Rouge, and
he's starting to panic. So I start laughing because we are so lost.
I'd say 2 of the hours were spent lost. 1 hour was spent looking at a few homes.
In a really bad area. There was not only devastation, but I don't even know if we're gonna get out at this point.
And I'm thinking I might as well just like drive them to the airport and put them on the Miami Dolphins plane.
Coach always does what he does best, is he's gonna smooth it over, he's gonna make it work, and everything's gonna be fine.
I called Mickey, and he got us squared away. So we got him back to the hotel, and fortunately, they hung in there.
And it just came down to what Drew, I think, has said so many times. New Orleans believed in him. And you got that feeling, like when we were here, and I think even Sean said to Drew at one point is, listen, you need us just as much as we need you.
That was the season where the group of castaways had been signed by Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton to come to hurricane-ravaged New Orleans and put together a team and see if we could go out and compete and win some games.
Scale this tree, right? Yeah, don't live. He falls.
There you go. Joe, what impact has Drew had on this team? I'll try to.
Oh man, big time leadership. The day one when I met Drew, he was 150% downhill, ready to go. Wanted to be a leader. Then when he got on the football field, knowing he couldn't throw the ball, he was still involved. He was still trying to be the general, trying to be the leader, and I like that.
Are you allowed to throw it?
I allowed to throw it. I throw it. Yeah, 80 throws is about what I'm at, and then 55 yards probably at this point, and then gradually I'll just build it up through camp. I think, I reached my limit as far as where I could go with rehab. Obviously, it was his first day out throwing in a team setting. We had to kind of battle through some things, and there's some things that look rusty, but overall, I thought he threw it around pretty well.
He was not 100% one bit as far as training camp was concerned, and I saw it because I wasn't 100% myself. And so a lot of days, he may go out and practice, but the velocity was not there. The arm strength had not gotten back completely, but he continued to rehab. He continued to strengthen it.
I didn't have a sense in my mind of what Drew Brees should look like, so it was hard for me to evaluate him in those early practices and training camp and OTAs and say where he was at in his recovery.
If you recall in the spring, Drew didn't throw at all, and then he began throwing at training camp, but on a pitch count of 40 or 50 passes. So he wasn't 100% yet, and he didn't have the velocity or the timing down yet.
At some point, he turned to offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael, who had worked with Drew in San Diego, and said something to the effect of,
"Is this it yet? Is he 100%?"
And Pete Carmichael apparently insisted, no, there's more.
As a coach, there's probably a little anxiety as you're getting through training camp early on, a couple preseason games early, and maybe the ball is just not coming out as well as you'd like. But again, the doctors just said, hey, process. You just got to trust it.
We'll see. You can always talk about how much talent you got on your team, but until that first snap on Sunday, when the real bullets start flying, we really start playing football teams across the league, you can't really tell.
This team looked awful during the preseason. They got blown out in the preseason games. It looked sloppy. They had run these guys into the ground in training camp in Millsaps. It just, expectations couldn't be lower for the Saints heading into that year.
There were stretches during that season, or early in that process, where we weren't sure if we were going to win a game.
I remember we played Indianapolis, and he had an interception in the game, and the ball floated on him a little. But after the game, he came to me, he said, there was a throw I made tonight that was a benchmark, that it felt like it's going to be just fine. And, you know, he's optimistic, but he was serious about it. There was something he did in that game that he was very encouraged with, that he hadn't felt or demonstrated prior to the injury.
And I would say by that last preseason game, maybe first or second game, all of a sudden you're seeing some throws. And
he's getting more reps. He's getting more reps, and obviously his arm is strong enough to throw the passes that a lot of people didn't think he'd be able to throw right now. So
we won at Cleveland, we won at Green Bay, we come back and win Monday night at Atlanta, and then we felt like, man, we can do this.
And I'm sure they'll be highlighting that a lot on ESPN tonight.
And really, I would say after the first 2 or 3 games, it really, the question just kind of disappeared. And
next question.
The game that cemented it was at Dallas. It was Sean Payton against Bill Parcells, his mentor. The Cowboys were really good then, an established team. And not only did the Saints squeak one out, they rolled on the Dallas Cowboys in that game. You could tell he had like a special book that he had probably written up that summer for when we played Bill Parcells in Dallas. I'm going to use this, this, and this. And I remember Peyton later saying they enjoyed that win so long that they asked the pilot to take like an extra long flight home from Dallas so they could all celebrate on the plane together. But that was the one. That was the one where they went from good story to, wow, one of the best teams in the NFC, no doubt about it.
I think we overachieved quite a bit that year.
What a matchup today on Fox. The winner, Super Bowl 41 in Miami.
I bet if you asked Sean Payton if he could have one do-over in his entire career, it might be the playoff game in Chicago. Now, they might never have won that game anyway. The Chicago Bears were so good. They had a great defense on their side, and they had the weather on their side. It was kind of an icy, wet day. Look, enough improbable things happened in that 2006 season. I guess it was too much to ask for one more improbable victory.
You know, that was probably riding on pure emotion and grit and determination and, you know, just the city behind us, the bond that was being created. I mean, it was magical.
Somewhere between 2006 and 2009, Brees went from being a real good story and a good leader and an MVP type of guy because of everything to, oh, wait a minute, this guy is the next Dan Marino.
But going into 07 and 08, you know, with a 7-9 and an 8-8 season, I think we realized, all right, this is a little bit tougher than, you know, maybe we expected, anticipated.
We felt like we're better than this. Our record doesn't indicate the amount of talent we have in the room.
But we have learned so much during that stretch. You learn more from failure than you do from success.
We knew we had every single element that it took to be a championship organization. It was just a matter of putting in the work and then showing up on Sundays to handle business.
Not only had we learned so much from 07 and 08, but the right pieces were in place. You know, we had made some trades and acquisitions and some draft classes that all of a sudden were starting to mature and come together, and it was just beginning to boil. Like we were hitting that tipping point where all of a sudden we were going to come alive.
It was exciting. I mean, we had a great group of guys that we're so close to today.
The veteran players on both sides of the ball and the way that guys worked for one another and cared about one another.
At off-season workouts, guys are finishing, guys are rooting for each other.
We're competitive. We wanted to be the best.
Everybody's flowing, nobody's complaining.
It got fiery at times.
They were going at it, offense versus defense in practices. You could have charged admission for those practices and people would have gotten their money's worth.
We had our battles and you'd fight, but it was like fighting with your brother.
The guys really loved coming to work to be with each other.
We're acting like a family.
And when you're family, special things happen.
From the very beginning, I think we felt like this was our year.
Gosh, the Super Bowl season is, it's such a blur. I mean, it's such a blur. I just wish I could rewind and just watch the entire thing with a big bucket of popcorn and enjoy every aspect of it.
The Saints were a freight train in 2009. They win the first game over the Lions by 50-something to whatever, and they're winning games left and right.
Things were clicking for us. Things was going the right direction for us. Offense, defense, special teams, everything was clicking.
Once you win about 7 or 8 games in a row, you're like, okay, we're really good.
Every season requires those wins that build confidence, belief, momentum, and just that, we can do it mentality.
I'll never forget the game where they're at Miami.
Miami
was a battle.
Where we go on the road and we're down 21 points.
And they needed some turnovers, and they needed Drew Brees to go for it on 4th down. And
he's bringing us back. He's bringing us back, and he obviously had the one where he
dive over the goal line, and he ran one in and dunked over the goalpost.
Find a way offensively and defensively, play after play, just fight our way back.
It showed our toughness.
The Washington game where we go on the road, going there and knowing that we're in for an all-day sucker, and they get up by a lot.
And we throw an interception, Robert Meacham
runs it down, strips the ball.
I remember blocking for him to at least give him some room.
Comes back, you come away with points off that, it is incredible.
But, that right there shows that was toughness. No. Yes, we messed up. We got your back, Drew.
End of the game, if they make a field goal, they basically ice it.
Kick is on the way, and it is no good. He missed the chip shot with one.
And we find a way to get some pressure. They miss it. We go down. We score overtime. We get it back. We kick a field goal.
Good. Let's go home, everybody, as 12-0 champions of the NFC South.
We go running out of that locker room just like.
I don't know if we should have won that one, but.
We can overcome any odds. We can beat anybody, anywhere, anytime.
That was the moment that most of us were really on board with. We should win a Super Bowl, just with the level that we were playing at.
It became clear that this was a really special team.
The regular season just puts you in a position for the playoffs. The playoffs is the prize, and then the grand prize is the Super Bowl.
One of the best things about the Saints' playoff run in 2009 is it was no fluke. So here's who Drew Brees beats the other quarterbacks that he faces in the playoffs there. Kurt Warner, Hall of Famer, and the Arizona Cardinals come into the Superdome in the divisional round. No problem, they take care of them. Brett Favre, Hall of Famer, and the Minnesota Vikings come in the NFC Championship game. A little bit of a tighter game.
First of all, Minnesota was an unbelievable team.
Half the Pro Bowl NFC team was Minnesota players. They were so talented.
It was kind of a test for us. How good is the Saints team? Can they beat the elite of the elite?
So hard fought on both sides. Everybody just pouring everything they had into that game. And then coming down to the very end where, our defense, Tracy Porter, get the interception. It goes to OT. Pierre Thomas, a great return. Going for it on 4th down where this is make or break, right? This is the game. We get it, 1st down, puts us in field goal range, and then here comes Garrett Hartley.
So you're lining up for the winning field goal in overtime to send the New Orleans Saints for the first time in organization history to the Super Bowl, and it all rides on this one play.
Everybody was thinking this to make this field goal for the city. Don't make it for us. Don't make it for just me as an individual. Make this for the city. Make this for everyone.
It right through the uprights and hits the fleur-de-lis.
Put it right down the middle. He was like, okay, here y'all go.
Not to mention you're in the Superdome and that place was going nuts.
That feeling still gives me goosebumps to this day just thinking about it. And
it was amazing. That ball goes through and then you realize we are going to Miami. We are going to the Super Bowl.
Oh my God, the Saints are in the Super Bowl.
What a circus the entire Super Bowl week is. Amazing that they find time to jam a football game in the middle of this 3-ring circus of activity that they have.
But the Super Bowl is a night game, so these guys have all this time, and they're kind of seating around, and it's just like this weird, limbo where you've got all this energy.
We were the newcomers. We were the wide-eyed, walking in the stadium, having no idea what to expect.
I was in a hotel room with the baby, and then my mom was there as well. And so Drew was like, can you come to my room and just watch a movie? Can we just watch a movie? I just need to calm down. And so my mom watched the baby, and I remember we just laid in bed and watched Major League. But it was a crazy experience.
On the flip side, here's the Indianapolis Colts, veteran team. They had just won a Super Bowl 4 years previous at that exact spot.
As an offensive tackle for an offense that throws the ball a lot against two of the best defensive ends in the world, and Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, you had some condor-sized butterflies at times. But
the biggest challenge for us is just going to be the start of this game and just
takes that way. A third down play. Manning's going to the end zone, and the ball is caught. Touchdown, Indianapolis.
The Super Bowl couldn't have started any worse for the Saints.
And sure enough, you know, they come out, bang, 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 they score 10 points, and it's 10-0.
And one of the hidden things that really helped them was Garrett Hartley, the kicker, makes 2 long field goals, both over 40 yards, before halftime.
Which was huge because all of a sudden you go from 10-0 to 10-6. It's a one-possession game. And not only one possession, but, you know, touchdown puts you in the lead. And that's when Coach Payton makes the call in the locker room at halftime that here comes ambush, you know, here comes the onside kick.
Looking at every time he comes off the field. Onside kick to start the second half. And the ball bounces off the hands of the Colt. And it looks like the Saints had it for a second. How about this way to start the second half? And the Saints football, they recover the onside kick. What a fearless start to the second half. Really unbelievable decision.
At some point, Drew got really hot.
He leads them on a touchdown drive to go ahead in this game, completing all 8 of his pass attempts to 8 different receivers.
And it was just completion after completion after completion after completion.
Yeah, one to Colston, one to Reggie, one to Pierre, whatever it was on that drive, he hit everybody.
Okay, wait a second. We're ahead now, okay?
we're in Miami. We're playing in a Super Bowl against Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts, and we're up by 7. You know, just taking it in.
Picked off. Look out.
You know, Tracy Porter cuts in front. He takes it back. He houses it for a touchdown. We're up by 14 and we're going to win a Super Bowl.
There were so many cameras and there were so many reporters and so many people that people were just pushing and shoving everywhere. And I ended up giving Drew the baby, Balin, because I was kind of worried for Balin. And Drew was up, you know, on the podium with the stairs right there. And so I was like, love, just take the baby. And so it was more kind of like a safety thing because you're just getting like pushed around. And
there's no question that image of Drew Brees holding up his son under the confetti, it's a lasting image in New Orleans. I think it's a lasting image in the sport. I mean, they probably should have trademarked the baby wearing the earphones. That's their thing forever. That's Balin Brees right there.
It was my idea for the earphones. It was funny, our good friends are Adrian and Nina Young. And so Adrian Young is the drummer for No Doubt. So they have kids, and I remember us talking about, you know, what do I do with the noise? Because that's what you love about the Dome. It is so loud, you know, and there's times I walk away from a headache, you know, a game with a headache. And so she was saying when we go and watch Adrian play, I put, you know, these earphones on the baby. So I can't take credit for that at all.
We think about the Super Bowl moment, you know, often, how that was a moment that I dreamed about, you know, ever since I entered this league is, I hope I can win a championship, and when I do, I hope that I have, you know, my child to share that with, and it's just awesome.
Let's head down to the field. Here's Lisa Salters.
What has been the coolest part of the week so far for you?
Meeting Marshawn Lattimore, Antonio Brown, and Jarvis Landry.
This is exactly what you told me earlier. Hands to yourselves, guys. They fight constantly, right?
Pretty much, Brett.
All right, we lost them. We lost them.
I have completely lost control. When I was pregnant with Balin and we found out it was a boy, I remember his grandma coming up to me saying, well, good luck, because Drew and his brother used to try and walk on my walls. They were crazy. And I was thinking, well, that's a strange thing to say, you know, and sure enough, she was right. I don't know what it is about their genetics, but they're crazy. I can't control them. I literally can't control them. And then Drew comes home and he riles them up again. You know, like I will just have fed them and bathed them and like I feel like it's calm, and then he'll walk in the door and be like, who wants to throw the football? Who wants to tackle daddy? Who wants, you know, to do this? And I find myself like, okay, get off daddy. Like he needs, because Drew will never say he's sore. He'll never like say daddy needs to sit down. Like he is just not that person. That's not in his DNA. So I find myself like I have to be the bad guy. Like you cannot jump on daddy's back like that. You cannot sweep his legs. Like you guys are getting bigger, you're going to hurt him at some point, you know? So, but that's just the kind of daddy he is.
Yeah, there's lots of funny stories about when I was trying to court my wife, Brittany, at Purdue. I guess the first one and maybe one of the most legendary is it was my 19th birthday. So it was in January, season's over. It's kind of our off time as a football team prior to starting winter conditioning and then into spring training. And so I'm with a group of guys and we're kind of at a house party and we're having a good time. We're kind of out in the parking lot.
The snow was probably maybe this high off the ground.
There's like 10 feet of snow around us, but we don't care. We're just having a good time.
I was there with a friend at an apartment complex, and Jason and Drew came in, and I remember Jason's hands were bloody because they were wrestling out in the snow. And that was my first introduction to my sweet husband.
You know, here walks this girl, you know, right by me, and I immediately look at her, and I look at them, and I say, I'm gonna marry that girl. And I go kind of chasing her into the house and try to start up a conversation, but you know, it's my 19th birthday and basically made a fool of myself in front of her. I probably gave her every cheesy pickup line you possibly could to try to impress her, and obviously it was not doing that. In fact, she thought I was just a kind of a football jerk.
I thought he was a typical crazy football player and didn't have a lot of interest in him at the time.
I remember Drew coming home telling me that he met this young lady named Brittany. I could see that, you know, Drew definitely had a little sparkle in his eye.
So then, fast forward, and we're into the summer, and we meet again.
At one point, I kind of go over and strike up a conversation. I can tell she's remembering the first time we met and really wanting to exit this conversation however she can, yet she can't find anybody to come save her, right? And so we're talking, and then there's a group that's going back to kind of an apartment complex that, you know, a lot of the players and people on campus stayed. And so they were making their way back there, and everybody was claiming they couldn't drive because they had had too much to drink. So I hadn't had anything to drink, so I said, you know what, I'll drive. I'll drive everybody.
And he has convinced me that he doesn't have a ride to this next party that we're all going to. He's used every now excuse that he needs to drive my car, and I finally explained it's a stick shift. You probably can't drive a stick shift. And of course he says, I can totally drive a stick shift. I've driven a stick shift before, this is great.
I'd never driven a stick in my life.
Needless to say, he had never driven a stick shift in his entire life.
I'm totally just troubleshooting this as we go along. I only stalled twice. You know, it was about, you know, I don't know, 6 or 7 miles away. Only stalled twice. One was on a big hill at a stop sign, in my defense.
I spent the entire, probably 10 minutes laughing hysterically because we were just jerking back and forth and back and forth.
So I thought I was pretty successful, but everyone got there safely, and that was all that mattered. And I think maybe just the fact that I was trying so hard to impress her and make her see that I was a decent guy and to give me a chance, I think that won her over to a degree.
We went back to this party, and we ended up spending all night talking, just staying up and talking, and we had the most similar views on everything. It was crazy. I mean, we wanted to name our children the same names. We had the same religious background. We had, you know, the same ideas of where we wanted to go in life. And at that moment, I think we just both knew. Like it just clicked, and it was almost scary. You know, just that overwhelming feeling of, okay, is this it? Like, is this how it happens? Like, this is it? He did not call. He did not call me the next day, and I was like, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to transfer because I just drove a football player back in my car at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's never going to speak to me again, and I thought he was the one. And sure enough, we went out that night, and of course he was like, I lost your number, you know, one of those things, and we were inseparable ever since.
The rest is history. Brittany is the epitome of multitasking. Like, you can only imagine with 4 kids, and you know, times where I'm here at the facility and I'm watching film, and you know, I know I'm kind of, you know, I'm on my way home, and I'll give her a call or a FaceTime, and here she is, and I'm setting the phone down to talk to you, but I'm here making spaghetti, and it's, you know, Rylan, get off the table, and it's, boys, you know, quit throwing the ball up against the cabinets, and get over here, and Callan, get the, you know, the silverware on the table, and Bowen, get the milks for everybody, and you know, it's just like, it's amazing how she's able to manage all these things and do it in such a loving way. I love watching her love our kids. You know, each one of them, she's such a great, she can read people and read emotions really, really well. And it's amazing to see the different personality traits in your kids and the way that she is able to handle each one of them based upon those personalities and based upon the way that they would best respond is a gift, and she's got it.
You know, it is amazing that they're at the age where they get it. They understand what Daddy does, but in that same aspect, I feel like we're so blessed because there are so many valuable teaching fundamental lessons here, right? Of humanity and charity and kindness and losing with grace and, you know, being a good sport about things, you know, that there are so many things that I think we're able to teach them and that hopefully they listen.
My favorite thing is just sitting back and watching my kids play, honestly. I love sports. I've loved sports since I was a kid. I love playing it, I love watching it. It's been such a huge part of my life. I've always hoped that my kids would love it as much as I do. It seems like they do, which is great because these are things we can do together, and I feel like I can impart, you know, wisdom and advice and teach them, you know, the things that I learned when I was a kid from my dad, from my granddad, from my coaches, and but just to sit and watch them just go and be creative, and those are my happiest moments as a dad. If Britt and I can just sit there and hold hands and watch our kids play, it's the greatest.
It's another thing you see on TV and you see in commercials is Drew Brees with his kids, but if you see him when the cameras aren't on and you're just around the facility all the time, it's Drew Brees with his kids. I've also had the chance to go out and do a story with him coaching his sons in the flag football league that he started in New Orleans. So every bit of everything that Drew and Brittany did as a young couple who wanted to embrace in New Orleans, now they're a growing family that has embraced everything about New Orleans.
You know, I don't even know if I could put it into words what New Orleans and the city has meant to us. I mean, they embraced us at a time where, you know, we were still so young. And I think that because we are here, they have shaped us in such a way that we are better people, you know? And I think there's such a love and kindness and hospitality, you know, and there's, I mean, the New Orleans people, it's amazing because they really make you better, you know, and they remind you like life is good. You know, there's a lot of things that you could focus on that could be going, you know, badly, but I feel like as a whole, New Orleans has really shaped us to be better people, you know, more loving, kinder, and I mean, I had all my babies here, you know, like this is truly our home. I love it.
I have a coach's Bible study on Tuesday mornings, and we were talking, I mentioned that you guys were coming from New Orleans, and I said, can you believe that? He's going to set the NFL passing record. I can remember when he couldn't do a pull-up, you know, when he was in the 8th or 9th grade. it's an unbelievable story for people that know Drew. But they all just smile because he was just such a great kid. That's the first thing people will say about him. He is a great kid.
Not only was he gifted and talented to be one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, but he's one of the most positive influences on the city of New Orleans post-Katrina, on the communities that he's been in, and on so many lives. I can't even begin. On a personal level, the times that I've seen him go out of his way to change somebody's world.
I asked him for a favor kind of out of the blue on behalf of a friend whose kid was going through some stuff. So somebody 8 levels removed from Drew. And I shot him a text out of the blue saying, hey, it would mean a lot. Know you're totally busy. If you could just say hi to this. And within 30 minutes, I get a text back saying, absolutely, I'll handle it. He's sending an incredibly heartfelt couple-minute message to this kid who idolizes him. He doesn't know this kid from Adam. I don't really even know the kid. It's not my kid. It's just something that he does. He appreciates and understands his role as a role model, but a lot of people say that. He does that, right? And if he's doing that for me, somebody that he sees maybe once a year and texts with a handful of times a year, he's doing that all over the place.
He is a team builder, and it's been that way since, you know, we put the pads on in 1993. Drew's not the guy, he's not the me guy, you know, he's a we guy. And Drew had every right to be cocky. He had every right to think he was better than a lot of the guys on our team, myself included, but you will never see that. And so I think what happens is that when the guy at the top, who's supposed to be the man, is more concerned about bringing everybody else around and along for the ride, I think that's where Drew got most of his happiness in playing, you know, football with us, is the relationships you build.
Tonight is about us. It's about us. It's about our strength, our love, our compete, our passion, our togetherness. That's what tonight's about. Let's go get this win for each other. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
This is the night they have been waiting for in New Orleans. Was the circle, the date, the moment the schedule came out. You could have done the math, and now you listen to the roar.
Ball spotted at the Saints' 38-yard line. 1st and 10, 2:46 remaining. Saints lead it 20-6. Brees has completed passes to 8 different receivers already. He starts in the shotgun, drops back, looks to the far sideline, wide open, Traquan Smith. And Traquan Smith is going to go to the end zone. Drew Brees has done it. You have just witnessed history in New Orleans. Drew Brees is the NFL's all-time leading passer.
What a way to do it! There's only one word that comes to mind. Greatness. Right there, right now, that moment. There is the ball. And that ball is going to be headed to Canton, Ohio. The white gloves are on the Hall of Fame president, David Baker.
Hey, boys! How about that, huh? Yeah. How about that? Hey, I love you guys so much. Hey, you're going to accomplish anything in life you're willing to work for, right? I love you, boys. I love you.
Soak it in, Drew. Well earned. And to think that he does it here at home on a Monday night. In front of these fans and in this city.
Are you kidding me? Thank you, Coach. Come on, let's go win the game now. All right, come on.
Could it have happened any better way? Drew Brees with a 62-yard passing strike to Traquan Smith, and he is now the NFL's all-time leading passer.
So the lights outside, they're going to be black and gold. It's been pink outside. It will be black and gold for the next 9 minutes, and man, that's special. His boys are down there on the sideline, and you had the whole team. Everybody goes out in the middle of the field, and they congratulate him.
You know, I don't know how all this time went by. Like, I look back at all of these years, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did this fly by? You know, how have all these years gone by? And so, gosh, when we think about him retiring, I feel like it's almost like a bad word, you know? Like, it's just, I mean, he loves it. And why would you stop something that you love, you know? And there's nothing better than doing something that you love every single day of your life.
Drew is hyper-focused at whatever it is that he does. And when he sets his mind on something, you know, Drew's going to complete it. He's going to get it done. The intensity that everybody sees from Drew all the time is constant. And by intense, I mean very competitive. So the leadership was, no matter if it was just a 7-on-7 drill or if it was a 9-on-7 drill, he always wanted to win. And everybody else took the lead and followed suit.
So he's a guy who's determined to be the best and work on his game and studies it nonstop. He was a true leader. He showed you by example how to work hard. He was very hard on himself. He was determined to be the best and wanted to be best and wanted to be great, which is good. And he knew how to have fun too doing it.
I'm proud of everyone in here, though. I'm proud of everyone responding, because we made this night more than just special. He made this night throughout his career special. But for us to be able to share in it, we made it special for him. Game ball goes to Drew Brees.
Obviously, this is special, guys, and I hope everyone in this locker room knows that each and every one of you is a part of this, man, and forever will be. But this is not the reason that I'm still playing this game. All right, this is a special moment. I'll remember this forever. But I came back for one reason, and you guys know what that is. So let's keep taking steps one at a time, man. Because I got my sights, you have your sights, we have our sights set on something even greater.
Louisiana is known for three things: their food, their music, the Saints, and the birthplace of me, Ellen DeGeneres. That was four things, but who's counting? Here's what I want to do. I want to say congratulations to my friend Drew Brees on beating the record for passing, which I thought I had the record for passing, because I pass on everything. Everything. Would you help me move? Pass. Would you speak at my nephew's bar mitzvah? Pass. Would you please pull over, ma'am? Pass. You know, seriously, I pass on everything, except when I heard this was for you, my friend. I will not pass on that. Congratulations, Drew. I love you so very much. And you know, I'd do anything for you, unless you need a ride to the airport, and then hard pass.
Drew, what's going on? Mr. Breezy, it's been a pleasure to be here with you. Congratulations on breaking the record.
Congratulations, man. I mean, all-time leading career passer. You deserve it.
Das Breezington, what's up, buddy? Favorite backup here. Just wanted to say congratulations on being the NFL's passing king.
I want to wish you congratulations on becoming the NFL's passing king.
Congratulations, Drew.
Drew, congratulations on becoming the all-time passing leader in the NFL. You're the man.
Drew, congratulations.
Oh, man.
Proud to know you, buddy. Congrats on the record, Drew. What a guy.
Drew, you did it. Congrats on breaking the NFL's career passing record. We're so proud of you. Oh, my God.
They're the best. Oh, man. That was special. There's just so many people that have a hand in this. So many people that have been a part of this journey, and it just makes me think of all those people. I think it would probably take almost a year to reach out to every single person that I feel has had a hand in this. There's just so many. It just makes me so proud. I hope that they're proud. I hope that they have a great sense of pride, feeling that they are indeed a part of this and have had a hand in this.
Chance to watch the 9 for 9s?
I have, yes. Honestly, my favorite part of watching all the 9 for 9s is watching them with my kids. The funniest part is the fact that, you know, Balin was around for the Super Bowl, right? And he was the only one. And so I think the other 3 feel like they want a moment like that, you know, and I hope that, you know, Monday night was one of those moments for them, but that we'll be able to give them some even more special moments in the future.
Yeah.